Welcome to video 3 for the literacy course, and there's only one more video after this. I want to start off by sort of responding to a few things that have been raised by students in responses or in chats. And the first one is kind of about looking back at that book that we used in the last course. And it talked about some tools for inquiry learning, and especially what jumped out to me was this description of habits of mind. This is the foundation, the first thing that we have to focus on when children come into school. And that's why I thought in teaching JK, my role was really if they wanted to come to school by the end of JK, I was a success. My goal was to get them comfortable and confident with school. The habits of mind that are talked about in that book, I think of them also as ways of being, because they're things that are very deep in us. And to turn that around, instead of thinking of this is what the students have to develop, we also have to think about this is where we have to start. This is what they have to see in us and experience with us. It's really a very traditional way of learning. Even when I was in my 20s, I taught this way, but I didn't have the words to explain it to somebody else. You can do this on your own. Someone mentioned how, you need the internet for inquiry learning. That's only one tool. They didn't use that, 100 years ago. And yet they still taught this way by asking questions and exploring. And the habits of mind develop through relationships. So the children see that we are hopeful or that we are critical thinkers. They need to see that in order to, want to do that themselves. And isn't maybe this the reason why the elders talk about relationship as being the most important thing between a teacher and student, the relationship, the nature of that relationship. So we can think about relationship as the beginning point for inquiry learning. Now, if we really believe that relationship is most important, that can kind of color a lot of decisions that maybe we agonize over sometime. Many of you have mentioned, the time that's needed to give individual attention. Well, if you know that relationship is most important, maybe you focus on the child that you know needs to build that relationship most with you. It becomes your measure. It helps us to decide what to do when the rule says one thing and our intuition whispers in our ear, forget the rule and follow your heart. How do we do that? How do we justify it? Well, we can justify it when we know that the relationship is what we're most focused on. Might be how do we plan our lessons to encourage the growth of relationships, all those different things, how we assess learning, how we speak with parents. So we get to the point where our hairs on our arms stand up a little bit all by themselves when we see something that we know is happening and it is destructive in some way for the relationship. You have a chart in your readings, and this is just a little reminder to you of all you've learned about stages of development. So primary and junior children in that chart, the crisis for them for like 3 to 5 years is they have to not feel guilty. That's the risk, that they feel guilty. And the 5 to 13, the risk of feeling inferior. So whenever we see something that is making a child feel a little less good about themselves, we know that's a danger sign, because it's affecting the relationship. Do they trust us? Are they open-minded? All those things that were on this page. Okay? So keeping in mind the development. So I'm going to read the poem before I run out of time, because there's a bit more I want to share with you. So this poem goes back to November 1998. And this was JK. And it's called Morning Glory. So you might want to get your copy out and look at it. And I suggest you read it over a few times on your own and just think about it a little bit before you go to the response paper. Your fingers measured distances on the computer screen. It was so fortunate, I thought, to question, not reprimand. You were solving a problem of angles in your own way, and you proceeded happily without me. Later, we went through flashcards of words together. You remembered a few, really smiled at me for the first time. I read some new stories to the class that morning. After lunch, you came to me 3 times, asking me to listen to you read the same books every time. We celebrated quietly together that this was a very special day for you. Now, you ask me daily to help you select the right books. A subtle inner glow seems to highlight your golden hair. Like morning glories blooming early in my garden, easily overlooked in haste. Your delicate petals open to gentle light, but shrink from midday sun. I think what I'm trying to share is with each of these poems, these are the times when those habits of mind show up. If I look back at those words, I was sharing hope that she was going to progress. I was being open-minded, because I had told the kids not to touch those computer screens. These were in the early days of computers, and we were afraid of them. So I taught them not to touch, and here she was, with her fingers running over, following these lines. Open-mindedness allowed me not to reprimand and say, get your hands off that screen. And it was a turning point for her. The other thing I wanted to mention, there are a couple short readings along with this, and one of them mentions the development of boys and girls. And it says there are 3 main differences between boys and girls, and it goes on to describe them. I sort of take issue with this because it's not enough information. When I did my primary specialist course, we spent a lot of time on the psychology part, stages of development, and it's much more complex. It's not just that, one is a boy, one is a girl, one likes cars, one likes dolls. No. The actual physical development is different. So when girls start school, one of the differences is at that age, they will usually have more fine motor development, fine motor control. Boys don't. This goes in stages like this. They're not the same, and at certain times they are in a plateau, and they're the same for a while, and then it changes. So just thinking boy or girl and making assumptions isn't good enough. I think my video is going to shut off in a minute, so I'll say goodbye and look forward to your responses. Thank you.